and everyone in the organizing committee. So good afternoon, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to moderate today's session on the final day of the South Asia SBCC Conversation Summit. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Shyamashree, and I currently work as a program officer at the India Country Office of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I was a contributing member to the Ministry of Health's COVID-19 vaccine communication strategy, and I manage investments related to COVID-19 response at the federal level, at state levels, among other system strengthening efforts. Coming to today's topic, power of audio visuals and animation, it's no rocket science that over traditional text-based collaterals like posters and banners, audio-visual content is attention-grabbing. The audience feels more engaged. It's easier to remember. Today, our presenters will leverage their rich experience and specific projects to highlight the advantages of using audio visuals and also touch upon what should be the characteristics of such content for improved reach and uptake. For example, we have seen in a dynamic crisis situation like COVID-19, it's important to come up with content and narrative that will stay relevant over time. At the same time, it's important to be accurate, not only around the core message, but also everything being projected on screen. So even if it's a COVID-19 vaccine message, the character's adherence to COVID appropriate behaviors like mask usage also becomes very important. Our first topic is Parwarish Ke Champion, experiences from design and development of a resource book for frontline workers. This is not around COVID-19, but we'll discuss pre and COVID, post-COVID scenarios. It's being presented by a highly experienced team from Lady Irwin College. Dr. Archna Kumar is a professor in the Department of Development, Communication and Extension. Her teaching and research focus on participatory development, behavior change theories, and monitoring and evaluation of SBCC programs. She has multiple publications to her credit and has been engaged in projects related to the use of innovative participatory techniques for M&E and use of ICTs and community media for social change. Accompanying her is Dr. Aparna Khanna, who is involved in teaching, training, and advocacy of development issues. Her research focused on assessing SBCC tools and strategies, ICTs, social media, and training programs. Using the much needed human-centered design approach, she develops training modules and innovative communication tools like storytelling. She is also the co-founder of Campaign for Mental Health and advocates the use of the 3L model, which is life skills, literacy, and library for sustainable development. So without further ado, over to the team from Lady Irwin College.
Thank you so much. Can I request my colleague, Dr. Aparna Khanna, to share screen? Both of us will be presenting this today's presentation. And we are going to be not presenting a pre-recorded one. So quickly to, just as my colleague says, share screen, just to tell you a little about this, why we are making this presentation is that we were in the midst of developing this resource book for responsive parenting when the COVID pandemic broke out. And we made some mid-course corrections. And I think we also then got a lot of experience as to what are the possibilities of using this resource book in COVID scenarios and in post-COVID. So we thought we would like to share these with you and in our experiments of evolving this resource book as well as seeing its applicability in COVID scenarios. The project also was sponsored by UNICEF, and the UNICEF team intensively worked with us. Alka, Malhotra, Sunisha, and Aparajita Chowdhury were intensively engaging with us. But it also brought together teams from within Lady Irwin, that is the Department of Child Development, as well as the Department of Communication, Development Communication, coming together in developing this particular resource material. I think we are all familiar with the importance of responsive parenting and why it is important to focus on developing a package of messages so that they can be taken out into the communities for the proper development of children. Our research, not within Lady Irwin as well as outside, is clearly indicating that the kind of parenting that is done by parents has a deep impact on child development processes and severely harms the growth and development of children. Apart from this, frontline research is also indicating that a lot of practices that are being followed are very harsh and coercive, which is leading to a lot of detrimental changes and in the growth of the child. And that in the current multimedia digital age, a lot of messages are out there for parents which are confusing them in terms of what should be the parental practices. This is not just only with all segments of society and especially the marginalized community groups. So it is in this context that UNICEF has wanted to develop a responsive parenting strategy that focused on developing conversations around parenting and how these can be better discussed, and context-specific guidelines could be developed and could be given to parents so that better inputs could be provided. And that is why the thought around how could frontline workers who already engage in these practices could do this better. Also, they wanted to extend these conversations amongst different networks and groups where parents were an integral part of it, so that these could then resonate out into the community, and different multimedia packages could perhaps be used. However, a core material needed to be developed as to what are the kind of messages that need to be taken out into the community. It was in this context, can I have the next slide, please, the mandate given was that to us was to develop a basic resource material for frontline workers, so that this, which could be used in different small group settings and in dyadic settings, where conversations could be done around responsive parenting. The other important thing for us was the guideline was that there is already a lot of material existing and we needed to build around these. And since the focus of this material was largely between 0 to 3 years of age, we needed to build and to create material that would take it from 0 to 6 years, so that parents would have greater understanding about what are the challenges of parenting. Also, this material needed to be something that ASHA workers could use with caregivers, and it was something that was participatory, that would be fun, and that would enable engagement so that the frontline workers would have a good resource bank available for them to be able to carry out these activities. Next please, when we started with this project, basically we followed the principles of design thinking, in which we used the various steps. And one of the first steps that we did was to dialogue with different stakeholder groups. And not only were workshops held, but also a lot of review of material, of existing material was done to help understand and identify what were the key. So on one hand were the experts who were child development experts, people who were working in the communities and who had immense experience came together, and a whole message matrix was created as to what are the key messages that needed to be taken out to the community. Also, it helped us to understand better that when we are defining and trying to identify what should be the format of the material that needs to be taken out, what is working, what is not working, and what are the frontline functionaries more comfortable with, so that they could use this to also take the ideas ahead. A very key important aspect that emerged was that we were able to identify not only what were the key messages, but what came out was that it is not just the informational aspect that is important, but also how can we build skills and what kind of resources can be made available to parents also as these conversations are. Now, that was a tall order. Hence, when we had to develop this resource material, these aspects became the key premise on the basis of which we were building our ideas. Next, basically can I have the next slide, please? In this, these are the core messages and the key domain areas that emerged at the end of the workshops that were held. These helped us to focus on messages that would be not only cover the domains of child development, but also these were messages that would help us include issues of inclusion, diversity, stereotyping, and these issues could also be well built into them. So it was this balance that we tried to create as we work towards this message matrix. And in the various workshops that were held, these are just some visual glimpses. Quickly, we'll just go through them. And then I'll ask my colleague to take over, who will talk about, Aparna will discuss how we went on to discuss, develop the final kit. These are some of the workshops that we had.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kumar. And taking the presentation forward, I'd like to share some of the key design considerations that were, kept top of the mind while designing this particular tool. We needed to be socially relevant. We had to maintain the cultural context, ensure that we cater to all people from all, various backgrounds, and also did not inadvertently promote any stereotypes. We also wanted the tool to be flexible, that it could be, the content could be used in other formats as well, and it could be used to initiate a dialogue, a conversation, and give people an opportunity to share their experiences and their ideas and reflect on their actions, and give them the opportunity to self-manage their own circumstances and practices. So the idea that we struck up was that we will use a Varnamala, or the Hindi language, the alphabets of the Hindi language, to talk about and build the functional literacy, or rather the parenting literacy skills among the, not only the field functionaries, but also the other caregivers. And so a phonetic approach was used to develop this material. We kept in mind that we'll pick up key themes, use illustrations primarily to reach out to the to the end users. The content was formatted in the form of, the key messages were formatted in the form of poems or couplets to ensure easy recall. We built on incremental learning. So just like you build the fundamentals of a language, we use the fundamentals of the language to also communicate the fundamentals of parenting. And as has already been said, we tried to devise all kinds of interesting activities based on things that could be easily available at home, and using those resources, parents could do activities, and the frontline workers could communicate those activities in clear and concise manner, and yet ensure that they can be adapted. So the final idea is that this is how the Parwarish champion, the resource book looks like. The cover page is on the top right hand corner. As I said, we use keywords, core messages. We had 144 illustrations. The idea was to communicate each message through 3 key visuals, 1 primary and 2 secondary, to enable the ASHA workers to have those conversations through visual communication primarily. And as I said, the poems, there were poems. We also made it flexible in the sense that once the keywords were already covered, there were other words suggested which could be adapted for the discussions. And towards the end, when we started making this particular resource book, things were different. And eventually we entered the COVID-19 phase, and we had to then also, count for COVID appropriate behavior. So these are just some glimpses of how the pages of the resource book have been designed. So if you notice, it can easily be, each front page can easily be also used like a photo card, which can be disseminated in different ways. So if you put them all together, it is a resource book, it's a flip book, and the instructions for the caregivers, or for that matter, the frontline workers, have been given to conduct each meeting in a very, very structured manner as far as managing time and the sequencing is concerned. So starting from telling the person that please follow the steps of welcoming, organizing the group, making them sit in a circle, to then, discussing what was done in the previous meeting or talked about in the previous meeting, and then how to practice the new content that was being delivered in this meeting, and recalling and recap, using the technique of recall and recap, wherein we ask for a 3-to-1 activity, which is 3 things that we have learned, two things that we will apply, and one more thing that we still need to know about parenting. So if every session starts and ends like this, there'll be some kind of continuity, and it will also ensure that there is, key messages are reinforced. So this is the structure. These are some of the other pages and keywords. So talking about play, talking about household chores, and involving children and all family members, breaking stereotypes again while talking about these issues. Importance of singing, dancing, and involving children, maintaining daily routines, that's dincharya. And and these are some other concepts. We will be showing a short film wherein you can see all the pages of this particular resource book at the end of the presentation. So, so as I said, this is how the instructions, as you can see in the left image at the bottom, you have the icons explaining how to take the session ahead, from Abhinandan to Punarkathan to Pradarshan and Charcha, Abhyas and Samapan, which means welcome, recall, recap of a previous meeting and the discussions there, showcasing the resource card for the day and discussing the topic, giving some kind of a practice of the activities to be done by the caregivers after a demonstration by the facilitator, and then wrapping up by using the 3-2-1 method. So the icons and the content explained in text are all there, and anyone can pick up the book and use this method to conduct a session. COVID-19 brought in a change. It changed the context, where we had to ensure that we change some of the messaging and in the resource book. Even some of the methods were changed, some visuals had to be changed, and we had to incorporate then ideas about how to disseminate the book without taking it to places physically. And so we also thought of trying different formats. The content also formed the basis for some of the other resources that UNICEF has developed on parenting in the recent past. And considering the what do we do with this resource now that it is there? We've been field testing it in our in the communities groups that the department engages with for our extension activities, and we've realized that yes, the tool works. One, and we need to focus on training and capacity building. We see a lot of scope in terms of translating the contents into other languages, and obviously then use considering today's reality, trying out different formats, both print and digital, for enhancing the access and reinforcing key messages. We also have some ideas that we have tried out in terms of disseminating the content, and we've been leveraging the parents and caregivers groups, particularly the WhatsApp groups have really been a boon in this period. And I'm sure the COVID-19 scenario all of us have experienced has changed dramatically from being absolutely unknown to now some things have become known, and we can say that yes, at least we'll have access to some groups using technology. We also we have some ideas about how to reach across to groups who are not accessible by technology also, and the resource book can be adapted for such situations. We also suggest using online training sessions, organizing competitions and campaigns, and of course the whole process definitely needs to be researched further and the experience documented. Having said that,
Aparna, sorry to interrupt. If we can quickly play the video you have,
right? Sure,
and then if we have time, we'll come back to this. Okay?
Right.
Yeah.
So these are just some of the other adaptations that the department has been working with in the COVID context, exploring virtual melas, rallies, and exhibitions, and using the same resources or adaptations of these resources on ground, and reaching from the virtual world to the physical world, into the houses of our families. These are some experiences, glimpses of how the content can be used. And yeah, thank you for your patient listening. I'll now request the team to please, if you could share the video about the resource book, that would be really nice.
Yeah, just give us a couple of seconds. We'll share the video. अरे सुधा मैम को कोई लिंक्स भेज दो भाई मीटिंग के अब
So thank you, Dr. Archana and Dr. Aparna. We'll go to the next presentation and we'll combine the Q&A, towards the end. So our second topic is UNICEF's Corona Supervillain series. It will be presented by Geetali Trivedi. Geetali is the communications specialist with UNICEF Uttar Pradesh. She has about 25 years of communications experience, initially with advertising and then with development communication. She's been involved with innovative communication programs, experimenting with integrated strategic communication and ICT models for urban, adolescent, and reproductive health programs. So over to you, Geetali. Geetali will actually be presenting a pre-recorded session, and then we can take Q&A for both the presentations.
Right. So thank you, Shyama. And before we get into the pre-recorded session, I just wanted to say that, yes, you said it's not rocket science. And as a matter of fact, that was the name of a partner with whom we developed the animation content. And we will go through the presentation. And after that, I'd like to show you a couple of films if we have the time. And just to say that in the pandemic, we were using animation and humor to take away from the whole fear. So we were looking at fun, but communicating with fun. Can we have the presentation, Akhil? You could play the presentation, please.
yes.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Geetali Trivedi, and I'm representing UNICEF India. Today, I'm going to be talking about, our Corona Supervillain series, content that went viral during the pandemic and content that transcended language and socio-cultural barriers. The COVID pandemic really threw up many communication challenges. It was a rapidly evolving scenario. Things were changing from day to day, hour to hour, really. And countries were going down into lockdowns. There was fear. People didn't know what to do. People didn't know what the virus was, how the virus was transmitting, how could they save themselves, prevent it from spreading in the families, and protect themselves. There was a lot of technical messaging, and the challenge was really to communicate at scale, communicate to everybody in the least possible time. And also one of the issues was that most of the traditional forms of communication, for the last mile, which is interpersonal communication, the activation, etc., had shut down, and we were relying completely on digital and traditional media. The key considerations, therefore, before us, when we looked at, what kind of communication could actually talk to people, tell them everything about they wanted to know about the virus. One of the key considerations was that we wanted this communication package to be universal in its appeal. We wanted a villager in the last village in the remotest part of Uttar Pradesh or India to understand the communication if he or she could see it. So there had to be a universal appeal. We wanted messaging to be very sticky. Mostly communication was in the IEC mode. So we were talking down at people. We were telling them lots of things, all written. And with literacy levels being what they are, we weren't sure if people could understand what was being written. So we wanted very, very sticky communication, a communication messaging that could actually penetrate and stay with the person. And in this context, in the context of a virus which was invisible, we wanted to be able to demonstrate visually how the virus transmits. How is it going to move from person to person? What are the precautions that you need to take? What are those simple actions that you will take to shed the virus and to break the transmission? There had to be a call to action very, very clearly. And as UNICEF, we do believe that children and youth can be agents of change. So what did we do? First and foremost, we took a very critical decision that we would want the communication to be completely visual. So there's going to be no dialogue, no language. India is a complex country, and we have multiple languages and even more dialects. So we wanted that, a person, whether it is in the northern part of the country or the southern tip, we wanted that person to understand what we were talking about. So clearly, no language, no dialect, no spoken dialect, completely visual communication. Then we looked at the concept development with the communities. We reached out to communities across the state of Uttar Pradesh, and we got them onto Zoom. Thank God for Zoom and virtual platforms. We got them on there. We discussed what were the issues that were troubling them. There were different topics that we spoke to them about. We understood what were the concerns, what were the information requirements, and then we built it into the concept itself. We storyboarded, scripted and storyboarded, and developed, animatics, which we pre-tested. During the pre-testing, we made use of our social mobilization network, which is our on-ground force for polio and immunization. And it was interesting that, this social mobilizer had the mobile phone on which he would show the video to the person from the audience, and then help the person with whom it's being pre-tested to fill up a Google form and give us the feedback. Post the testing of animatics, we went into full-fledged production of animation films, and then once the films were done, we again went back to the community. So, there were like 3 rounds of testing to make sure that the message was A, complete, B, it was easily comprehended, and C, it was moving enough for them to take action. So there were many evolving issues, and once we created the concept of the supervillain, the first and foremost was the issue of mask. And we were seeing lots of people, who would dangle the mask below their nose, who would not really, use it appropriately. So consistent use, correct and consistent use of masking was our first film, where we're showing how if you don't use the mask correctly, the virus will come and get you. The second film was dealing with social distancing, and again, it demonstrated that in case you're too close together, the virus can jump from one person to another. And if you maintain the distance of 6 feet, then it was not possible for the virus to get to you. The third film we were making was on hand washing, and we were trying to make we were saying hand washing, but we also know that there's a huge amount of water shortage. So we said, how about making a film where we can talk about hand washing in resource poor settings, where you could utilize maybe do it yourself kind of a small bottle and create your own make your own washing station. And that was the third film. The fourth film was on a very critical topic of stigma and discrimination. And, this was, there were a lot of issues with, a lot of families are getting stigmatized. And there was a lot of discrimination happening at that point in time when, COVID was almost like, it's people will not come near you. And there was a lot that was happening in the community. So we spoke to those people, and had COVID and their experiences, and we brought back real life examples into our films. The fifth one was regarding a responsible youth, and how we showed a responsible and irresponsible person, and how the responsible person protected his family members, because there are intergenerational households, and young people were likely to get the virus back into the house, and how the behavior change happened. The sixth film was related to safe school opening, and it's talking about what teachers need to do and what children need to do, and how you can all be safe in school. So now, can you please play the film on mask? When we were looking at amplification, we had looked at partnership with almost 9 to 10 government departments within the state, and we ensured that we had them on board while the process of development was happening, and we made sure that we had the logos in the film, so they would quite like to disseminate the films to the different channels. So in the WhatsApp group across Uttar Pradesh, we reached out to youth, health and frontline workers, teachers, media, police, civil society, all our CSO partners, all the government departments, and we managed to reach 12 million there. On UNICEF social media channels, while UNICEF India launched the campaign, it was very quickly adapted and adopted by South Asia, Latin America, the United Nations Global Handle treated it as well, the International Labour Organization, and almost all, I think, state governments' social media channels are using it. Below the line, the LED screens in marketplaces, urban cities, all the metro trains, airports, railway stations, video vans were being launched in states. So a lot of the content got used there. So overall, we found that because access of the mobile phone, and these videos were viewed on social media platforms, so access on the mobile phone is with men. So 67.5% overall were viewed by men, and 32.5% were by women. And yes, this is fairly significant given the fact that it shows the access to the gender biased and the gender divide actually. So what were the learnings that we had? So as you saw the Mask film, it was very interesting, and this film really went viral, and it went viral not just within India, and I will show you through the other slides as well, but within India. We were in Uttar Pradesh, right? This is the film that came from Uttar Pradesh, but it went across all the states here, and as you can see, because it was without a language and without any dialogues, it went right across from West Bengal, which speaks Bengali, Tamil Nadu, Tamil speaking state, Maharashtra, and then Kerala is again, Malayalam speaking state, then Kannada speaking, Gujarati, Andhra Pradesh. So it just went pan country. It also went outside in the South Asia region. It went to Cambodia, Bangladesh, Philippines, Nepal, Pakistan, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Myanmar, and it just didn't stay within this region. It actually went viral, and it traveled to almost 18 states and over 21 countries. And at last count, when we looked at UNICEF India handle and UNICEF Rosa handle, these films have had 300 million reach, 106 million views, and in UNICEF, anything above 3 seconds is what we count as a view, and 12 million engagement. 12 million engagement means that 12 million people either downloaded, shared, commented, or liked the film. So that was the degree of engagement. Before we even started planning the films, we had actually entered into partnerships with the government. And that's where we managed to reach 12 million people through WhatsApp. So what were the learnings that we had? First and foremost, speed is crucial. It is critical in a public health emergency. Technically vetted content and visually appealing content is absolutely critical. We need to know what we have to say. We need to get it out there as soon as possible and make sure we reach as many as possible. Strong visual communication can overcome language and socio-cultural barriers, enabling use across geographies, as we have seen. And maybe there's a lesson for us that when we design content for emergencies, we should be looking at visual communication. We should try and ensure that the content can go down to low literate audiences as well as audiences across geographies. And with Corona Supervillain series, we actually managed to do that. So I think one of the lessons of the pandemic, I'd like to end with what we have been talking about in our stigma films is be kind. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Akhil. And can I request Akhil to just play the one film that I'd like to share with you, which is the Responsible Youth film. If you can very quickly have that. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. And I think after that film, I don't need to speak a single word. Over from my side. Shyama, up over to you.
Thank you so much, Geetali. And it was a pleasure seeing it coming out. And even now that you have, summed up the entire experience for us and the audience, it's really fabulous. So I don't see any questions on the chat. If there are any, questions or clarifications from the audience, you can maybe raise your hand or put it on chat. Meanwhile, I'll just put one question to Dr. Archana and Aparna, is that if you could allude to some of the challenges you faced other than COVID, so any type of systemic challenges that you faced in scaling up this wonderful resource that you have developed, or are even facing it today, that would be really helpful to know and learn from.
Thank you for the question. I think I just want to say that this whole, especially in a COVID scenario, prioritization of parenting issues in the beginning was something that was we faced a lot of challenges because this took a back seat. But I think the COVID, as it has panned out, this has now taken center stage, and increasingly everybody is talking about with children staying home, schools being locked down, and parents needing to occupy their children. The issues of parenting have now become center stage. So what we realized that the content that we had in the resource book was very, very applicable and usable for parents even in these. So the point that has come out, I think, in this session is that content that is well vetted and content that is that can be applied in different kinds of context, if we are able to inbuild this in our resource material, which we tried to do, because so when we were initially writing the comments for our Karyakartas as to how they have to hold these sessions and the applicability of the content, we realized that it was very suitable even in the COVID context. And all you had to do was, so what messages, even though they were not in the resource book, the messages all around, when they were able to link up very easily to them, and they were very relevant. So one thing that was definitely there. So prioritization of issues within community becomes a very key issue. So not only within communities, within funders and people who are going to support these kind of initiatives is something that is something very important. Always these kind of things, some very critical issues sometimes take back seat, and they need to be also pushed up front. So that's one thing I think is very, very important and was a challenge which we need to think about also. If Aparna would like to add on, Dr. Aparna would like to add on anything?
No, I think it's fine. I have mentioned that we did try to use different formats of reaching out to people, and I totally agree. Just the visual format is what works the best because it crosses the language barrier. And so I think that's all I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much to both of you. And Geetali, one question for you is that UNICEF continuously, comes up with more and more campaigns. And do you have any lessons that you have learned from this and are applying to your newer work streams? If you could allude to that, that would be good.
Sure. So, so Shyama, really, I mean, when I was thinking about it also yesterday, I think, when there is a pandemic or a public health emergency, like I said, the stage one is really getting the information out, right? So how do we let people know the mechanics of protection, how does it transmit and all of that? So that's like a phase one level. And it's important that people get aware, but with behavior change, I think all of us here are behavior change professionals, and we also understand that level two, when it's actually practicing, so that's where some of the challenges come in, where people are not, either they're not practicing, or there is a sense of lack of support within the community. So the community is not ensuring, so we actually have to put in a new social norm of ensuring that people practice those behaviors. So given this, we have actually been working on a new campaign as a follow-up to the supervillain campaign, in which we are telling people, it's a concept of it's possible to change, right? So that's a concept. So there is a zero within us, a person who's not adopting the behaviors, and there's also a hero within us, the person who's practicing those behaviors. So how do we nudge people from the zero stage to a hero stage? And that's the campaign that we are currently working on, and I hope that in the next next few weeks we should have it out. And so watch out for COVID Zero Nahi COVID Hero Banne Ka campaign, in which we are actually looking at this whole decision making process within an individual, and how the when we were pre-testing it, the communities actually told us that this is very similar to what Indians practice, like Antaratma ki Awaz. So there is this hero and zero within us, and how the hero actually the good person, the good avatar, talks to the bad avatar, and convinces the bad avatar. And of course there is a little nudge from the community to ensure that there's a social norm in place to practice those behaviors. So that's a interesting way that we're moving forward. But I think this pandemic has given us multiple lessons that we have learned in terms of importance of content, and in this context, I just wanted to say that our first response at UNICEF, particularly in Uttar Pradesh, had been media advocacy. So, we reached out to, editors of all media much before the lockdown happened. As a matter of fact, 16th of March 2020, before the pandemic really hit us, we had a session, a joint session with all editors, and with the government, WHO, and UNICEF. We briefed them in exactly what's going to be happening. And so, even before we could develop content, we actually bought time by getting media channels and media houses involved with the correct information. So, and we were also using them for media advocacy. So they were at that point in time, UP was going in for these large melas, and we, through media, we told them what are the challenges of such a thing if it happens, and we built the pressure. We advocated with the government through media to not to have that. And actually the government, once they realized how serious it's getting, they actually did not do that. So it has been a very interesting journey, and I think I would like to thank Johns Hopkins for actually creating this platform, because it's very important that lessons that we have learned from this pandemic, we should be better prepared for it next time. And whenever you have the time, Shama, I would want to show you like what we try to do, normalizing living with the virus, because as we all know that we will have to be living with the virus. So it's not just like a knee-jerk reaction, but how do we incorporate that as a part of our lives? And if possible, then I would like to end with playing one film in which we were reaching out to children and teachers on normalizing this whole thing, and what are those behaviors that they need to bring and practice in their daily lives as we learn to live with the virus. So whenever you have the time, I think Akhil can play that film.
Sure, Geetali. I think we have one last question from Ayushi, and you alluded to a little bit during the presentation, but we can have some more knowledge from you. Is that how were these COVID villain videos disseminated in areas where access to technology is not there? And it is not only relevant for you, but in case of a lot of social and digital media content, what are some of the back of the envelope, like strategies we can have for people who don't have access to internet? So over to you.
Correct. So, one thing that we did see, and I had said that the reason for our partnerships that we did with all the government departments, so we got them on board. Right, we got them on board, and we used their logos everywhere, so they helped us in dissemination in the last mile as well. So while we went into the environment through social and digital media, the government helped us by pushing it out to all frontline workers. When I say all frontline workers, you can imagine that over 3 lakh ashas, all the ANMs, all the teachers, all the police officials. It was also up on a Ayush app, so almost like 1.5 million were reached through the app. And so ashas were using it on mobile phones. They were, distributing it within the community. And actually, we wanted to do like tracking of how content goes viral without digital devices as well. We wanted to do that, and we'll be undertaking that study as well. At the same time, this content we integrated into all activation that was happening. So whether if there were video vans that were going out, this content was there. And I remember, when I heard, I was really very happy to know that in Tamil Nadu, the chief minister was flagging off video vans with this content. So the content went into everything. So whether it was, road crossings in urban cities. They were showing on LED screens, they were showing content, local content there. And I'm sure that in Delhi, a lot of people saw this in Khan Market and Connaught Place. And all this content, I mean, it wasn't that we were giving them the content. They accessed it, they leveraged the content, and they plugged it into all the local users. So those are some of the learnings, because with the increasing internet penetration, I think, we are going to be seeing a lot of people, using it, downloading it, and taking it to the last mile. And perhaps, one of the things that I remember that we had done, but not for this, but in terms of dissemination of content, is we must follow, the natural way content flows. So if Bollywood songs are available through mobile phones, why cannot such content be quickly made available to that network of mobile service providers? And why can the content not flow from there into the community? Stuff like that. So through a pull and push method, we should actually look at that.
Sure. Thank you so much, Geetali. So I'm going to check with Ishita. Do we have time for one last video from Geetali? And then we can.
Yeah, it's just a minute,
Yes.
one
We
and
can
a
just
half minute
play
or
the
something.
video and
Yes.
then end after that. Yeah.
Okay, and and then we can move to the plenary.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add here that I hope all of you love this villain, the super villain. We deliberately made it a lovable villain. It wasn't something that you hate, because we were not wanting to create fear. We wanted to make this little creature, we wanted to show how the creature gets into you. So there was a lot of apprehension initially that a virus is going, if it's going to be very fearful. But the fact of the matter was, the virus was the key reason a lot of people stopped and watched the video. When in the first frame, we try to keep it in the first frame always, and that was the hook that people wanted to watch it. Over for myself.
Great. So over to you, Archna.
So just wanted to say that this was based on a technical manual, and I'm sure that you will never realize that this was based on a technical manual. So we actually took all the points of a technical manual and we said, how can we make it interesting for the parents to know that the schools are safe for children to go back, for the children to understand what to do, and for the parents to make sure that children know the behaviors, for children to understand what to do, how to eat your tiffin safely, how to sit in the class, and for the teachers, it was like a checklist, what all they need to be doing to make the school prepared for the children to return. And after the children go back, again, to reassure the parents that the school is safe for the children to come back tomorrow. So that was, we took a technical manual and made it into an animation film.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Geetali. And thank you once again to the team from Lady Open College. So we have already received the plenary link. So would request everyone to move there. Thank you very much to the audience for your participation. And yeah, wrapping up, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much.